Let's talk more about the top story, which of course is the tariffs. The Times is reporting today that Keir Starmer is very happy, in inverted commas, with the tariff. This is what Trump is insisting, as of course we saw the markets plunge. And as I said earlier, the sweeping tariffs introduced wiped trillions from the global stock markets, as Keir Starmer was urged by business leaders not to retaliate. US stocks plunged along with the value of the dollar, prompting fears of a possible recession after a return to tariff levels not seen since the 1930s. Now, Donald Trump insisted that actually Keir Starmer was very happy about Britain's tariff treatment. We had a great dialogue. I think he was happy about how we treated them with tariffs. That's what he told reporters on board Air Force One, referring to this 10% levy as opposed to the 20% that hit the European Union. Let's talk to Lance Foreman now, former Brexit Party MEP. Good afternoon, Lance.
Very good afternoon, David.
So what's your reading of this? Because, I mean, I don't know, I said this yesterday, but when I woke up yesterday and I saw the tariffs, I did grin when I saw the EU had been hit with double the tariffs of the United Kingdom. And I think if we play this cleverly, this could be a massive Brexit dividend.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's not good to be facing tariffs, whatever. Tariffs are a bad idea. They're a tax on business. And attacks on business are not good for an economy. However, everything is comparative, everything is relative. And yes, when you compare us to the EU, we're only facing half what they face. So actually, it could provide opportunities for Britain because, you know, there might be opportunities for us to export where the EU was previously exporting because we'll be more competitive. But it's not, business isn't all about tariffs. It's not all about price. So there are so many other factors that one has to take into account. You know, the currency fluctuates too. It wasn't that long ago, you know, 10, 15 years ago, it was $2 to the pound.
Yeah.
Now it's 130 to the pound. You know, you've seen a drop of about 60, 65%. So a 10% tariff is sort of almost irrelevant when you compare it to that.
Well, you're showing your age there, Lance.
Well, you know, even just before, you know, around 2015, I think the long-term average was about $160 to the pound. And still, you know, we're at 130. It's been as low as 120. In fact, it went almost down to, I think, 107 at one point. So these things are always fluctuating. So a 10% isn't going to make a huge amount of difference. But we'll have to see, you know, what Donald Trump has done is he's thrown all the balls in the air. We see where they land. Markets are in turmoil, mainly because markets like some level of certainty, and there's uncertainty because no one quite knows where it's all going to land at the moment. But could be a very good buying opportunity for people, you know, with a little bit of, you know, like a little bit of risk to get back into the markets. They've dropped 5% pretty much overnight. They're still 5% higher than they were this time last year. So we'll have to see.
We will indeed have to see. Well, President Trump's sweeping tariffs have sent shockwaves, as you were saying, through the global stock markets, wiping trillions off the value. Business leaders, and this is really interesting, actually, business leaders are saying to Starmer, will you please resist retaliatory measures? If you remember, of course, the Labour government says, oh, we're going to talk to businesses and decide how much of the tariffs we're going to, you know, which goods we're going to impose tariffs on. They're all saying, hang on a minute, let's just pause and don't do anything random and rapid. Let's now listen to Ursula von der Leyen speaking about the EU's response to the tariffs imposed by Donald Trump.
I know that many of you feel let down by our oldest ally. Yes, we must brace for the impact that this will inevitably have. Europe has everything it needs to make it through the storm. We are in this together. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us. So we will stand together and stand up for each other. Our unity is our strength. Europe has the largest single market in the world, 450 million consumers. That is our safe harbor in tumultuous times. And Europe will stand at the side of those directly impacted. We have already announced new measures to support the steel and cars sectors. Now, we will also convene strategic dialogues with the steel, the automotive and the pharmaceutical sectors, and others will follow. Europe stands together for our business, for our citizens, and for all Europeans.
I mean, you know her, I know her from our time in the European Parliament. I'm not sure threatening Trump is a really good plan.
Well, I'm not sure if she is threatening him.
Isn't she? Come on, Macron is also threatening him. They're
Well,
really angry.
We all know the EU is a protectionist bloc itself. It puts tariffs on goods imported into the EU from around the world. And more than that, it has all these sort of protectionist regulations that make it very difficult for people to export into the EU. Um, this is why Trump has imposed tariffs, and one would hope that the sensible approach would not be to do what the Chinese have just done and retaliated with 34% tariffs on American goods. The thing to do is actually negotiate down and say, right, we want zero tariffs from the USA. We will scrap all our tariffs to the USA. Then everybody's a winner.
Absolutely. Well said. Dennis McShane, former Labour MP and former Minister of State, joins me now. Good to talk to you. In terms of the tariffs, I have to compliment Keir Starmer because I think he's taken the right approach, which is to say we're not going to do anything rash. We're going to sit and think about this. We're not going to impose reciprocal tariffs, which Lance was talking about. My worry is when they say to businesses, how would you respond? Which goods do you want to hit with tariffs? I don't think that's up to businesses. I think that's up to government.
I completely agree with you, and I agree with you on the earlier point. I was making that point in a conversation, a conference yesterday morning with the German Institute of Foreign Affairs. I don't think the endless insulting of Trump, it makes you feel good. It's a bit like listening to somebody endlessly insulting the European Union. I mean, I've had that up to here for 20, 30 years from the Tories and Nigel and all my friends on the right. It was childish. It serves no purpose. The big news is, frankly, that don't forget Donald Trump's, don't call them a tariff, they're a tax on jobs in Britain. He's hit the car making sector, the vehicle making sector, with 25% tariffs, exactly the same as other countries. And so that means every Jaguar employee, every Land Rover employee, Aston Martin employees. I mean, I know it's niche production, but they have incredibly skilled, brilliant guys working, producing Aston Martins, and even Lotus car kits. They're now being kicked in the wherever by Donald Trump. He doesn't give a toss about this country. And
do you really believe that? Because I'm not sure that's true.
Well, I can't tell. I mean, what I know is, for example, that he has imposed, take another country, good, strong economy that's not in the EU, just like us, Switzerland. He's imposed 34% tariffs on the Swiss, 10% more than the EU. So goodness knows what the Swiss have done to upset him. I mean, they hide all his money from his rich donors, you know, the tech bros or whatever they're
Allegedly,
called.
yes.
Oh, allegedly.
Allegedly. Lance, let me bring you in here. Just in terms of giving a response to that. I mean, it is true that 25,000 jobs in the UK exist at JLR in the West Midlands. Also, they make 26,000 mini brands. The US is the biggest export market for JLR, for Aston Martin, for all of those. But they are high-end goods, aren't they? So those people who are going to spend 100 grand on a car probably won't notice the imposition of a tariff.
Yes, of course. You know, people in the luxury market will have a bit more flexibility on price. But the point Dennis made, he said that Donald Trump doesn't, care less about our country, which is why he's put these taxes on. Well, clearly Rachel Reeves doesn't care less about this country because she's just massively increased national insurance, which is going to hit our economy far, far worse than Donald Trump's tariffs. And worse than that, if we really want to compete with America, we are completely murdering our own industry with our ridiculous energy costs. Americans pay a sixth of what we pay for electricity. We need to sort that out, ditch all the net zero nonsense, and then we'd be able to compete properly in the world.
And Dennis, your response to that, I also want to throw into that Jeremy Hunt's article in The Telegraph, which is to say this is the moment we seize the opportunity. We become Singapore on 10, something Lance and I have talked about a great deal. You slash tax in this country, you grow the British economy, you get inward investment, and that is the way out of this mess.
I love Singapore. I worked there many years. The General Secretary of the TUC in Singapore is a member of the Singapore Cabinet. They own all property. You can't build anything without getting government permission. It's a very, very small mini state, and they do very well, and I admire them. But this nonsense that 60, 70 million people, Scots, Welsh, Irish, living all over the place, can become a high-performing, tiny Chinese city-state is just nonsense.
That's not what we're saying. We're saying that actually what Lance is saying, his point is that Rachel Reeves is strangling this country because we've got increased taxes, you've got employer national insurance contributions, small businesses closing. It is a mess.
Well, look, that's a completely different debate. I'm very happy to join in it. I thought we were going to talk about the fact that the Chinese, forget us. I mean, we're tiddlers now. We're becoming weaker.
No, we're not. That's the point. That's the problem, which is we shouldn't be thinking like that.
Hang on a second.
Come on, then.
We are very strong in financial services and banks, but those aren't the people that Trump are targeting. We've become weaker and weaker in manufacturing. A lot of our farmers in Ireland now, and that is because of years of very right-wing policies under new Labour, and I was a Labour minister too, and we've become weaker and weaker. Our share of our country going to manufacturing is 8%. In Switzerland, a much richer country, a financial service country, it's 19%. We've got the smallest share of manufacturing in the EU because of government policies over the last 20, 30 years. Now, we're not going to turn this around overnight, but frankly, surely even Lance and I can agree that, and you know, that China imposing 34% import tax on everything out of America. That is massive, absolutely massive. And I'm afraid that Trump may think he can push the Brits around and von der Leyen around, and we can get antsy about Reeves tax or whatever you like. It counts as nothing when this giant economy, giant military power says, that's it. We're not going to be bullied and pushed around by a man like Donald Trump. That, for me, as somebody who knows China, I was Minister of China as well, that worries me. That's what we should be concerned about. I have no problems on the whole with the British government's approach, and the CBI is endorsing it. And I heard the boss of JCB endorsing it on the radio this morning. I don't think we can make this a party political thing, but frankly, it's also just not relevant that we're one of the countries on 10%. He's hitting Canada. King Charles has lined up with the Canadian people against Trump's desire to make them a state, to say they can't have a government, they can have a US-appointed governor. Thank God we've got a king who's got, something down there doing this, when so many of our commentators, so many of our politicians just want to roll over and say, oh, Donald, you're wonderful. You're going to save us all from something. I don't know what something is, but believe me, we're in for an economic ride such as Lance and I, I'm the oldest contributor I expect, have ever seen in our lifetimes.
Lance, your response to that, because I think your point was really valid. The cost of doing business in this country is now so astronomical, the number of businesses closing as well. Surely, actually, what we need to do now is to use the Brexit dividend to actually compete with the European Union. We now have some sort of competitive advantage, get that free trade agreement, and actually have an increased relationship with the United States and not be rude to them.
We absolutely should. I believe I saw in the media yesterday that Argentina has now reached some kind of agreement where there's going to be zero tariffs between Argentina and the USA. We should do exactly the same. We speak the same language. We're a capitalist economy. That's exactly what we should be doing. And hopefully the rest of the world will also negotiate lower tariffs and, eventually free trade. That's, it's free trade that makes the world go round. Protectionism doesn't help anyone at all. But there are also short-term, unexpected benefits too. So, for example, in my industry, in the salmon industry or smoked salmon industry, Britain is a major exporter. America's our biggest market for Scottish salmon. Americans will be paying 10% on our salmon, 15% on Norwegian salmon, 20% on Faroese salmon. That is an opportunity for Britain to export to the USA. If there happens to be a glut of salmon because Americans refuse to buy it because it's 10% more expensive now, well, what's going to happen? British consumers will end up with cheaper salmon. We might end up with some kind of benefit here. So you never really quite know when these things are sort of thrown up in the air. You never really quite know where they're going to land. It's all very well to speculate, but I think the coming weeks will reveal a lot more. And I do think the markets will stabilise. They're all in panic mode at the moment. So bye, I would say. Bye.
Bye. Final word, Dennis.
Very simply, I'm a great admirer of the Lance form.
Well, it's nice salmon.
It's smoked salmon. I've been eating it since I was student. I can't afford it now.
Since you were a student? How did you afford it as a student?
I bought trimmings, and then I started buying the real stuff, but I'm back to trimmings now because Lance won't cut his taxes if he can find a way of increasing his consumption of his wonderful
stuff. If Rachel Reeves reduces NI, we can drop our prices.
I am there, but this is going to get worse and worse and worse. Don't forget, there's about 400,000 people are hospitalized in America every year due to food diseases, about 3,000 deaths. Doesn't happen in this country. So when you say abolish all regulations and import that kind of food from America, I can tell you, Lance, the voters won't wear it. So, just let's be very clear. A lot of these regulations there are to protect people's lives, which are cheaper in America than here.
Just final word, Lance, so you have to get back in on that. Would you allow chlorinated chicken, Lance?
No, yes, of course I would.
Fine.
I've never met one British person who said, I'm not going to go to America.
Because I might get food poisoning. Well said. Gentlemen, thanks ever so much. Lance Foreman, former Brexit Party MEP, Dennis McShane, former Labour MP and former Minister of State for Europe. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen.